Hi, everybody. Mitch Tanenbaum here. Thanks for joining me tonight. This is the security news update for the week ending April 10th, 2022. As a reminder, you can find this podcast and our other podcasts at cybersecurity.us, and that's security spelled with a C. So the first item here is Kaspersky, the Russian software company, security software company, has been deemed a national security threat. Not a big surprise because they're reputed to be supporting the security of the Russian Ministry of Defense. And I think it's really hard to go off and serve two masters, especially when one of those masters is Putin. So right now, that means anybody that is getting federal dollars or is a federal agency cannot use Kaspersky software. Next, an administrator at Yale has admitted to stealing tens of millions of dollars of computer parts, laptops and iPads and stuff like that over the last decade. Apparently, she was authorized to buy things for under $10,000, and she did. And about 90% of those things she sold and pocketed the money. And insider threats are a really hard problem to solve. You only trust people that you think are earn that trust, and then sometimes that doesn't quite work out. So interesting challenge. On the software side, there's now a website that the major credit bureaus have been forced to put up called Opt-out Prescreen, which allows you to opt out from all the junk mail. Not all of it, actually. What you're opting out from is the credit bureau selling your information and your demographics and all the stuff that they have. So that's what you're opting out. It's good for 5 years. And if you want to make it permanent, you have to send them a letter. Not sure exactly why that's more secure, but whatever, that's what they do. So in any case, you can certainly do the 5-year thing. That's pretty straightforward just by signing on to the website. Next thing is that hackers have figured out how to hack WordPress sites, and it's sort of interesting. So they compromise an unsuspecting site. They do it in a way that doesn't make it obvious that they've been hacked. Then when you, an unsuspecting visitor, visit that website, they download a little bit of JavaScript. And currently what that JavaScript does is it hacks Ukrainian websites. This is part of the Russia-Ukraine war. But there's no reason why this can't be extended to absolutely anything. And I suspect it will be, because it's a pretty effective attack, I think, in terms of hacking people you don't like. You could have people who are doing this. You attach this to a command and control server, you now have a botnet. But it could get interesting, and I suspect we'll see more of this over time before this goes away. And ultimately, this boils down to people doing a better job of mostly patching their websites. I think most of these hacks are coming from people who have not installed patches. Next, hardware manufacturer SonicWall has released critical security patches for a bug that rates 9.4 out of 10. It's both a DDoS attack problem and also a potential remote code execution problem. Both of those are pretty bad, and SonicWall has released patches for most of their hardware, but not all of it yet. So hopefully they'll release the last one soon, and then they'll have their entire supported product line fixed, but they recommend that you go off and patch quickly. Next, GitLab patches a critical account hijack bug. It was an interesting problem. They accidentally created static passwords during the Omni auth registration, which shouldn't have had static passwords. And as a result, these accounts are now compromisable. The bug is rated 9.1 out of 10. For self-hosted GitLab, there is now a patch. Obviously, for the online GitLab, they've already patched it. And if you were one of the people who created a new credential in the time period where this was active, they have forced you to reset your password. So that part is good. Russia next is forcing users to install their own root certificate for HTTPS. They're doing this, I think, for a couple of reasons. First one, they've probably always wanted to do it so they could eavesdrop on folks. But the other one is that now they can't go off and buy certificates from Western certificate providers. So they're being forced to go create their own certificates. None of the browsers trust whatever the certificate authority is. And so you have to install a root certificate. Now, I could get on a soapbox here for a long time talking about the number of trusted certificates in modern day computers. It's ridiculously large as is, but there's no way the browser makers are going to go off and add, especially right now, a Russian root certificate. So this only affects Russian users, so it doesn't affect folks in the United States. But it's probably something they wanted to be able to do for a long time. This is a great excuse. Next, on the education front, Health and Human Services Department of the federal government has released a 2021 cybersecurity retrospective and a little bit on 2022. This is really more a history of the hack in 2021 rather than history of security in 2021, because unfortunately in the healthcare space, there really is not a lot of security. So interesting read, especially if you are somehow related to the healthcare space. Probably a good thing. And next in the breaches category, and I keep repeating this, and I will continue to repeat this. Cryptocurrency is software. Software has bugs, and bugs will be exploited. So in this particular case, Axie has both a game, an online game, and a cryptocurrency that goes along with it. Hackers compromised something about that. They were able to steal $625 million worth of cryptocurrency. And it was only discovered by accident because someone went off and tried to make a withdrawal, and the system wouldn't let them make that withdrawal. Separately, last year, hackers stole about 600 million from the Poly network. So, these guys are easy targets. They're just not spending the effort they need to spend, and there's no regulations at this point. And there is no requirement that they make you whole. So, if you are investing your coffee money in this, then that's probably fine. If you're, investing your house payment, that's probably not a really good plan because, we're just seeing way too many hacks. Some of these guys make people whole. Some of these guys don't make people whole. I suspect they haven't said yet that actually will, because they have a market cap for their crypto of about 8 billion. So this is what, in 10%, something like that. So they could probably eat that, I suspect. Don't know whether they will or not. They're certainly not legally required to. Next, the Partnership Health Plan of California was hacked. The hackers stole about 850,000 customers' records. In addition to that, they also stole another 400 gigabytes of data. And things are so bad there that the insurance provider said, if you're on their website, if you're having a procedure in the next 2 weeks, well, just have the procedure and we'll worry about the paperwork later. So I'm guessing they're going to be approving things that they might otherwise have denied, since there is no way to go off and get an approval at this point. But it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Next, software developer Globanth, which is based in Luxembourg, was hacked by the Lapsus group, even though the police in the UK arrested 7 folks associated with that group last week. Nonetheless, they seem to still be able to operate without those 7 people. Based on screenshots that they've released, it appears that they develop software for folks like Apple, DHL, Citibank, BNP Paribas, and others. So that's not a great thing. And these guys continue to hack folks. They also have stolen almost 200 gigabytes of Samsung phone source code, including the entire set of apps, the source code for the entire set of apps for their security module, their trusted zone, which they call Trust Zone. So I think that Trust Zone is not so trusted anymore. If there's any bugs in that, then they can certainly look at that. The fact that the source code was stolen does not inherently make the trusted zone the untrusted zone, but it certainly makes it the less trusted zone. So we shall see what Samsung does about that. The Office of Civil Rights keeps a tally board of breaches, in the last month, that seems to be surging. That could just be due to a backlog in reporting on their part. But as of last week, there were 117 breaches affecting over 5 million people in 2022. When Data Breach Today looked at the site a month ago, there were only 64 breaches affecting 3 million people. So that's an 80% increase in breaches and a 70% increase in the number of victims in just a month. The EU, which has never been terribly friendly towards American big tech, has proposed something called the Digital Markets App. It is designed, they say, to rein in big tech. Read that, American big tech. They don't have any desire to rein in European big tech. Fines could be up to 10% of your total annual revenue, and for repeat offenders, it could be 20% of your total annual revenue. The bill is not law yet, but they say the design is to make apps interoperate with each other. So they want, like Telegram to interoperate with, say, iMessage. Now, the only way I know to do that is to remove all the security. I don't think that's what they desire, but I suspect that that's probably what they'll get. I don't know whether calmer heads will prevail in the European Parliament. Lawyers are not necessarily known to be terribly tech savvy, so they may understand the consequences of what they're doing. But there's no way they can go off and say, well, gee, everybody should implement the same software and then it'll interoperate. That's not going to happen. The other thing that'll be interesting is whether some of the players might choose to leave the EU marketplace. I don't think that's going to happen because there's just too much money at stake. But that could happen if it turns out that the EU, demands that they do certain things that they don't want to do. Then they might well go off and decide to leave that particular marketplace. Next, hackers have found a really creative way to steal your data. There is an emergency data request process that the police departments and law enforcement can use to go to like a cell phone provider or somebody like that, software company, online service provider, and say, this is an emergency. I don't have time to get a warrant, and I need you to give me this data. Unfortunately, there is no easy way for the companies to go off and verify that this really is coming from the cops. So all you need to do is hack some policeman's email address, and now you are a detective, and now you can go off and make these requests. And apparently the hackers have launched a service for a couple $100. They'll use one of their hacked email addresses that they have and go off and request data on your behalf and have the service providers send it to you. Now, of course, the service providers don't really care. They don't care about your privacy. So they're not really going to go out of their way to go fix this. But I do know that at least a couple of senators got wind of this, and now they're asking questions. Whether anything will change, I don't know. It's a really hard problem, right? You got tens of thousands of law enforcement agencies around the country, some of whom are pretty much in the dark ages. And, other than calling them on the phone and saying, Joe, did you just send me this request? And they're just not going to do that. There's just too many of them to do that. And how do you know that the phone number is really the right phone number? So it's an interesting challenge. Next, car makers are challenged with software. There's a lot of computers and a lot of software in most modern cars. This week, it was brought up that Honda has some problems with some of their cars that between 2015 and 2020, maybe, they were sending codes from the key fob to the car in the clear. And for a given car, the key fob always sent the same code. They claim that you can't go off and actually drive the car because you need the actual fob to disengage the demobilizer. But you can break into the car and steal whatever is in there for sure. Honda says that they're not going to go fix it. And in fairness to Honda and every other car maker, and this is not limited to them. The problem is that You know, how do you fix this software? I mean, you know, there may not even be an easy way to go do that. And the fix might actually require new hardware. We saw this with Tesla last year, where their key fobs were compromised. And they did, in fact, download new software to your car, but it didn't do anything unless you bought a new key fob. So, you know, I think this is an interesting challenge as these cars become more and more computers on wheels. I think we're going to see more of this, even though the car makers, you know, try hard to make this difficult. We're going to see more of it. It's just the reality of it. You know, the only thing that works against the hackers is pretty much the car software industry is a pile of spaghetti, and you know, it's often the case that, you know, two cars of different years or two models from the same car maker use completely different software platforms for whatever reason. And so it's not like you know, you hack Windows and now you got access to a bazillion computers. This is more limited than that, and I think that's probably going to discourage some hackers. Still, that doesn't mean that some hackers won't try and won't be successful, like these guys who announced that they hacked the Hondas. And last, the security news bites for this week. Um, uh, as I said, we have more crypto attacks, cryptocurrency attacks. This one, the cryptocurrency exchange says they don't have the money to make people whole, so they're just fessing up right away that they're not. You're just out. Whatever you lost, you lost. And I think that's a pretty small attack. It's only a couple $1 million that were at risk. So that part's good, but they're just saying, check you later, bye. You know, I'm sure that will generate a lot of lawsuits. I don't know how successful those lawsuits will be, but I'm sure it'll generate a lot of lawsuits. Russia is reputed is going to be facing very shortly internet outages because they can't buy any spare parts for their internet infrastructure. They can't buy any equipment. They don't make a lot of the equipment that they're using. So it's going to get interesting. They're going to have a situation where they're going to have to, you know, rob one kind of service to prop up some other kind of service. And the government, of course, is going to be mostly interested in propping up the services they use and less what the people use. So that will probably make people somewhat unhappy. In the cryptocurrency space in the EU, they're proposing a law, and it actually may have passed. They're proposing a law that requires cryptocurrency exchanges to identify transactions that are moving either to or from what's called unhosted wallets, wallets that are run by an individual, not hosted at an exchange. Obviously, this is to get around the whole money laundering stuff. But if you think about it, and the U.S. has proposed, talked about this kind of stuff, but they haven't done it yet. If you consider that there's really only two reasons why people use cryptocurrency, and this is just my opinion, I'm sure other people will say there's lots of great reasons. One is to speculate, and that's perfectly valid. And the other is for criminal purposes. The criminals are not going to be terribly happy about giving up information that you know ties them to criminal activities. And you know, as the IRS here in the United States has discovered, that a lot of people who invest in cryptocurrency don't pay taxes on it. So now, if they get information from the exchanges that said that you know, transferred this much crypto, and you don't report anything on your tax return, then you know they might come visit you and say, "Can you explain this?" And as I said a minute ago, the Senate, or at least a couple of senators, have started asking questions about these hackers creating fake warrants. We shall see where that goes. I'm not counting on anything. And lastly, Apple fixes more Mac, iPhone 0 days. It really hasn't been terribly Apple friendly in the last year or so. There's been a lot of 0 day stuff that Apple has not caught internally, and that's probably does not make the folks in Cupertino happy, and it probably doesn't make their users happy either. So you know, Apple is pretty good about patching things, but remember, just because of the number of Apple devices, it could take a month for your patch to to percolate up into the stack. So if you're in a hurry, you can force the issue and cause your patch to be done now. So that's all I have right now. If you have any questions, obviously feel free to reach out to us. Until next week or next time, thanks for listening.
Turnkey Cybersecurity and Privacy Solutions offers the complete cybersecurity program for small to medium-sized businesses. They include everything needed to secure your business and meet compliance requirements. Visit our website at turnkeycybersecurityandprivacysolutions.com to learn more.